Hello everybody, my name is Professor Rich, and today I'm going to ask and answer one simple question. Well, not really. I don't actually have a question, but we're going to talk about the topic of free speech, and we are specifically going to look at some of the issues surrounding free speech and the restrictions that are placed upon it in the lovely country in which I was born and in which I live. That country is England, or the United Kingdom, if you want to use the collection of countries, the state, Great Britain, for the moment that it remains so. Hello, everybody. May I say hello to everybody in the chat? It's been a little moment, hasn't it? It's been a moment or two. And I've been very busy, and I hope that you've all been busy too. It's good to see so many people around. Hello, Irene. Hello, Sleepwalker. Hello to Manuel. And hello to Renit. And hello, of course, to Julia Hitata. Right, so we're talking about free speech. So let's have a little look at that. Free speech. So I'm not going to give you a definition of what free speech is. I'm not going to talk about the overarching themes of free speech. I'm not going to dive into what is a right and is it a right and the protections and all this other stuff, okay? I'm just going to start with an image. Let's start with an image. So here's a lady, and she's holding up a sign that says, "Here to talk if you want." Now, the question for you to ask yourself is the question on the screen here. What is this woman doing which may be illegal in the UK? What is this woman doing which may be illegal in the UK? She's standing somewhere holding up a sign saying, "Here to talk if you want." Now, I believe that this particular photo is a reproduction of the original event. So this is not the original event for which she faced legal action. This is a reproduction, and you can probably see that we're somewhere around or near Westminster. So how could it be illegal, or how could it be a breach of the law in the UK to hold up a sign saying, "Here to talk if you want"? Well, in fact, in this case, initially at least, they did decide that it was. This lady was fined £20,000. £20,000 in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. She was fined £20,000 for holding up this sign. Any ideas? Has anyone got any idea what might have happened? It was considered to be a violation of a PSPO, which is a Public Spaces Protection Order. And you would be forgiven for thinking that does sound like something out of the pages of a George Orwell dystopian novel. And Louis, just coming in with totally random off-topic question, asking about which part of England I'm from. Originally, I was from the northwest, a little county called Cheshire. But you would have some difficulty locating my accent because I've lived in 3/4 of England now. I haven't lived in the bottom left, but I've lived in the other 3/4 of England. And I've lived in several different countries around the world. So only experts can really pick up on the regional qualities of my accent now. They do exist, though. They are quite strong, actually. So no one's come up with anything. So this lady was standing outside of a medical clinic offering abortion, and she is a pro-life activist. And she was fined £20,000 for holding this sign and standing outside of a clinic offering abortions. And by the way, let me be clear about this. As far as I'm aware, she was fined for holding the sign, not for doing something else. So you might think, oh, maybe she was blocking the clinic. Maybe she was harassing people. Maybe she said something else. No. She was fined for holding the sign. Abortion is legal in the UK, Manuel. That's not the issue. She was standing outside an abortion clinic with a sign saying, "Here to talk if you want," because she's a pro-life activist. She believes... Well, I can't speak to what she believes. I'll just leave it at that. I don't know much about this lady. I just know about this incident. So this is one incident in the UK where you can be fined £20,000 for holding up a sign that says, "Here to talk if you want." Let's have a look at another issue. So I'm not going to read this tweet. And the reason why I'm not going to read this tweet is that I don't want the possibility of being arrested. So you can read that yourself. This is a quotation of a tweet by someone called Paul Chambers. This was in 2010 on what was known as Twitter. And you can see this part is what people got very excited about. So, the gentleman in question, of course, claims that this was a joke, but he did face legal action. And it seemed for a while that in fact he was going to face legal penalty for this. However, that judgment was overturned. So this is one of the stories where eventually free speech won out. And this case was dismissed. Pachu says, okay, if it's controversy, please leave it. Pachu, if that is the attitude, if that is our guiding principle, then there is no such thing as free speech. Because everything is controversial to someone. So if we have the attitude that if something is controversial, then we'll leave it, then it means there's nothing left. There's nothing left that we cannot leave. Because there is nothing which is not controversial to someone. That's why I jokingly made a comment in the chat at the start of the stream saying about 2 + 2 = 3. There are people who claim that. 2 + 2 = 3. 1 + 1 = 3. Or 2 + 2 = 3. It doesn't matter. The point remains the same. You'll always find something that's controversial. And I'll add my personal perspective. You know, I am the kind of teacher who does add his personal perspective sometimes. I think you've probably garnered that from watching the streams. I'm not someone who likes to tiptoe around his words. And would you possibly imagine that I am a teacher who occasionally likes to make a joke in the classroom? Can you imagine that? I'm sure that's just blowing your mind. You're just thinking, no way, Rich. I thought you were all business. I do occasionally make jokes. So, in my personal opinion, people being arrested or facing legislative consequences for saying something is offensive to me. That is offensive. So that someone would obviously make a joke. And by the way, this includes making the joke of shouting fire in a crowded theatre. But that's another topic. So it's offensive to me that people are arrested for that and even face potentially imprisonment, losing their freedoms temporarily and some part of their life because of something they said. So I don't agree with that. I find that disgusting, actually. Revolting, horrible, absolutely revolting. Of course, I'm free to be offended, aren't I? So, I'm going to say almost nothing about this. Okay, I'm just going to read the text on the screen. So this is an image which was part of an alleged joke by a comedian in Scotland called Mark Meechan. Due to UK law, I don't feel safe to talk about this other than to say that clearly I denounce the ideology which may be seen in this imagery. Just to describe that image a little bit, what you have on the left is a type of dog known as a pug. And these dogs in particular are known as being cute, according to some people. And what you have is you have the dog photographed watching the computer, and on the computer screen, there's a famous Austrian individual who had some rather extreme, distasteful, and destructive ideas, which he puts into practice. Now, if I were to speculate about what someone might find funny about this, it would probably be the idea of having a very cute pug dog that was actually the dog of the girlfriend of this comedian. So it was his girlfriend's dog. And this cute dog watching something horrible. Like, that's the joke, right? Now, Mark Meechan was arrested for this. He faced a trial. He was found guilty and he was fined. And he refused to pay the fine and they took the money. They just took it. Thank you. We'll take your money. So they didn't even give him the option of refusing to pay the fine. They just took the money. This was in Scotland. So there you go. Now, I've given you some examples, okay, of free speech or issues surrounding free speech in the UK, and I've talked to you about their consequences, right? But let's get to the point here, because you're probably thinking, oh, what's the big deal? What are you talking about, Rich? Who cares? Okay, these people were idiots. They made these ridiculous, controversial jokes or statements, or they did something they shouldn't have done. Maybe you think it's bad to do that, okay? So who cares, right? Is this really about free speech? Like, just don't make offensive jokes, Rich. Come on. Right? Bro, who cares, Rich? I mean, just don't make naughty speech jokes, am I right? Come on. Don't we have bigger fish to fry? Do you know that expression? Aren't there bigger fish to fry here? Is this really an issue that we need to get all excited about? Aren't there more important things? There are war. Hey, Rich, do you know there are wars going on right now? Why are you talking about this? Why don't we talk about how war is bad instead? Hey, and I agree with you, right? Like, that's another level of issue. Actual physical violence, death, and war. Yes, that's another level of issue. That's for sure. But for the present moment, there is no war in my country right now, so I'm talking about issues close to me. However, this thing is going on in my country, so that's why I've chosen to talk about this today. Okay. So why is this something that bothers me personally? What arguments can I make to say that perhaps we shouldn't be bringing down the force of the law upon people who say naughty words on the internet? Okay, well, my first argument. Treating jokes in a similar way to genuinely hateful speech and genuine violence blurs the lines between satire and support. So just digest that for a moment. Just look at that sentence and just digest it. See if you can understand what I'm saying here. Treating jokes in a similar category to genuinely hateful expression blurs the lines between satire and support. What is satire? So satire is when you mimic or copy something, and it's often done in a way to criticize or at least partly deconstruct and analyze the original thing, okay? And you may or may not be aware of this, but did you know that the British were once quite famous for their satirical humour? Manuel, do you know what I'm talking about here? Can you testify to the truth of my words? If I say the British were well known for their satirical humour, does that ring true for you? Irony, satire, sarcasm. We used to have quite a tradition of this sort of humour. And this, of course, comes out of classic comedic groups. The Monty Python crew, of course, come to mind. It's not like they never used satire for certain controversial issues. Even one such famous film, which rather, I might say, poked fun at my faith, but it is a film that I enjoy, by the way, quite a lot. I love that film, actually. The Life of Brian. That is a very, very funny film. And it's satire. It's a joke. So it doesn't, I like it. It's a good film. It's funny. I'm a Christian and I can watch The Life of Brian and find it funny. That might not be the truth for everybody, but for me it is. Because I know it's a joke. All right? I know that they're not genuinely expressing another message in that film. So it's so strange, isn't it, to have a law that restricts the comedic freedom of a nation that are known for using exactly that kind of humor. Isn't that weird? And I think everyone knows it, don't they? That if Monty Python happened today, the Monty Python crew, and they started doing the comedy today that they used to do in the 60s and 70s, yeah, I think we would see some police action. What do you think? Okay, next argument. Argument number 2. By the way, I'm open to questions. This is a discussion. Throw those questions in and I'm happy to chat. And by the way, for anyone who's new, I will be taking questions about this stream and about English in general at the end. So here's my second point, and I feel quite strongly about this one. Censoring offensive jokes cultivates fragility. Let's just have a look at this to see what I'm actually saying here. So censoring offensive jokes, in other words, saying, hey, you, don't say the hurty words, okay? Even if they're a joke, don't say the hurty words, right? If we do that, then we cultivate fragility. What do I mean by cultivate? So cultivate is when you make the soil in the right way so that plants grow. So if we cultivate the soil, then we dig the little hole, okay, and we prepare the ground and we water it, okay, so that from the seed, there's a chance that the seed will grow into a plant. This is cultivation. Cultivates fragility. What is fragility? Fragility is the opposite of robustness, perseverance, strength. Fragility is weakness. So what I'm saying here is by providing an environment where we rob people of the opportunity to be offended, by doing that, we cultivate their fragility. If you grow up in an environment where you are never challenged or offended, then that environment cultivates in you fragility. And so when something really bad happens that really upsets you, how are you going to respond? Because you've never had the experience of being offended by something that really, truly is offensive. Not just a joke, but something actually that really deserves your offense. So, I think that's a bad thing. This is my opinion. I think that is a bad thing. And I would even argue that we can potentially see that in our society. I'm not going to make a further comment about that, but if anyone asks a question, I'll do my best to answer it. All right, let's move on. Next argument. This is a good one. Argument number 3 as to why we should allow and even perhaps sometimes encourage offense. All transformative social movements began with offense. What is a transformative social movement? Civil rights movement, the right of women to vote, the right of all people to vote, subjecting the king to the laws of the country. These are all transformative social issues that began with offense. You cannot have social transformation without offending someone. And so if you believe that the world today is better in some way than 5,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 200 years ago, 50 years ago, then you have to accept that things that were once offensive must carry with them the potential to become something good. All transformative social movements began with offense. So if we are banning offense in our expression, then we are prohibiting the possibility of a transformative social movement. We're standing in the way of social transformation. All right, I'm cooking today. You feel it. Next one. This one's real. This one's an argument that you really should think about. Who defines what an offensive joke is? Who do you trust? Who do you trust to make that decision? This is the decision about what you are permitted to say under law and what you are not permitted to say. Who do you trust? Because I don't trust anyone, even myself. So I don't know who you trust. I wouldn't trust myself with this. I would be terrible at doing this. If I were to decide what was offensive and what wasn't offensive, what a horrendous world we would then live in at the behest of me. So I don't trust myself to do it. I certainly don't trust anyone else to do it. Who decides what is offensive and what isn't? And remember, as I said before, to me, this very idea of making offence against the law is itself offensive. I'm offended by that. So this law is offending me, which gives you a nice paradox to consider about this law. If this law is indeed about preventing offence, then it's not doing a very good job because its very existence is offending me. And by the way, it's not one law, there's several. The most pernicious, for anyone who's interested, is called the 2003 Communications Act, and it's section 127. And this is the one which gets a lot of people on trouble on the internet. Oh, and I had a little bit of text about that. So here it is. Communications Act 2003, section 127, basically says that it is illegal to send a message that is grossly offensive or indecent via a public electronic communications network. And let me make this point. Grossly offensive has no statutory definition. In other words, this term, grossly offensive, is not defined by law. So then what is it defined by? Well, it's defined by interpretation. So what does that mean? Well, that means whoever has the power can interpret that in any way they want. Do you see how this might be not a very good law to have? When you have a term like that that can be interpreted by whoever has the power, then they can use that law to make anything they want illegal. Because that term is not defined in law. That seems like a real bad idea. I don't understand how such a law Well, I do partly understand how such a law was created and put into place, but I don't understand why. I don't like this law, folks. Can you tell? Grossly offensive, not defined in law. This law is grossly offensive to me. So woe betide this law if I get into power. Anyone who gets into power in the UK can use this. They can direct the legal system to interpret grossly offensive any way they want. And by the way, this puts a lot of power in the hands of judges. Of course, there are directions for judges. They work on precedents and they work on this and they work on that. But let's not concern ourselves with the mechanism of power. The point is, there really aren't enough checks on this. What I'm saying needs to go. All right, finally, number 5. And now we're moving out of the realm of jokes and we're moving into just anything, not just jokes, but real claims. Okay, so if someone just really claims something that you just think is disgusting, what a horrendous, horrible idea. How could anyone possibly think something so inhuman as that, you might think? What a terribly inhuman idea that they just expressed. Well, now I'm making the argument to say that free speech means nothing if you don't defend the right of that person who says the thing that you truly, truly disagree with. It means nothing if you don't defend that. And I believe that's true. And I don't, I'm not going to explain it fully. I'm going to let you think about it. But that's my claim. My claim is free speech means nothing if you aren't prepared to defend the right to speak of the person who you most disagree with. Just going to leave you with that. All right, folks. Discussions and questions. Let's go. I'm going to give you some interaction now. Any questions you have, or just discussions or comments or whatever about today, and we're going to roll with that. Let's see what we got. I'm just going to go through what people have been saying. Manuel says, I could be a rock rich, but when a joke hits my heart, my response would be the best. I mean, no, yeah, that's the point. No one's telling you how to respond, right? Someone might make a joke, you know? Someone might make a nasty joke, right, about me, and I might respond in a nasty way. Okay, but I'm saying, all right, fine. But what we don't do is we don't make that situation illegal. It's just a human interaction. There's nothing bad about offense. Offense is, it's a reaction. We have the right to be offended. And often or sometimes when something offends us, we might want to do something about it. It could be motivating for us to be offended. You don't just have to take it on the chin if someone's saying nasty jokes that you don't like. You don't have to just be like, oh, keep hitting me, you know? You can I'm not saying don't fight back in whatever way that might, whatever form that might take. With love, with understanding, with discussion, by pointing out their immaturity. Or if you want to get childish about it, maybe you throw back your own nasty joke at them. But the point is, that's just a human interaction. And we shouldn't try to legislate that. All right, hey, oh yeah, how you doing? Good to see you. Individual sensibility. I quite like that term, Sonia. And yeah, I totally agree. That's it. It's individual. That's the point, isn't it? Like this kind of quest that we have to find, like, what is objective offence, what is objectively the right or wrong thing to say. It's absolutely fine for us to try to find that. But of course it's impossible because of individual sensibility. We're all different. We have our own experiences and our own opinions. And what we find offensive, we will not agree on with anybody. We won't agree exactly on the limits of offence. So yeah, there you go. And by the way, another issue about this is some people use offence to gain control. Like, you say something that offends me, and now I'm going to use that on you as a means of control. Have you ever known anyone who does that? It's really, really nasty. But it happens. And it ain't good. Feel free to disagree with me, everybody. Feel free to disagree with me. I'm open to it. Comedians mock politicians. Is this offensive? They can't do much about that, Pachu. It would be too visible for them to take action on that. Why the first example was offensive? It's just a reflection of the culture at the moment, Irene. So Irene is referring to the example of the lady who stood outside the abortion clinic and had a sign saying, "Here to talk if you want." Some people see that as like guilting women who want to have an abortion, and they interpret that sort of guilting as, I don't know, like an attempt to control what women do with their bodies or something. I can't really give you a strong argument for this because I'm not a radical, what do they call them? Pro-choice person. I mean, for one, I'm not a woman. I don't know if you've noticed that. So, I mean, that limits my kind of domain of expertise on this. But let's say that there are some people out there who don't like who basically think that the path to abortion should be completely painless and without any sort of guilt coming from society. And so they saw that as kind of an aggressive thing. This woman standing there with a "here to talk if you wish." I don't know. What do you think about that? So Manuel says, but one thing is defending the right to speak that I could disagree with just because there are bills made by people who we have given our ballot for deciding for by us. I'm not entirely certain what you're saying there, Manuel. Are you trying to put the blame on the electorate? I do think the electorate does have some degree of responsibility for things. However, I do believe that we are in the process of seeing the electorate rather stand up and attempt to take control of that responsibility, something that the late, great Tony Benn might well be proud of. He was a real big advocate of democracy and a socialist who I deeply, deeply respect. A great man, actually, a great British statesman, Tony Benn. If you want to read about him, I highly recommend it. Go watch some videos on YouTube of Tony Benn. He's dead now. Fascinating gentleman. Yes, I mean, I think it's always a good idea to play devil's advocate without the Julia. Playing devil's advocate is irritating for other people sometimes, but also it is a useful mechanism for attempting to get closer to the truth. And I do play devil's advocate with myself. And I do play devil's advocate with other people. Of course, there is a time and a place to shut up and be polite as well. That's something I've learned as I got older, by the way. I used to be a lot more, could you believe it? I used to be a lot more confrontational in my youth. And as I've gotten older, I have become a little bit more respectful just for people's peace and quiet and general politeness. You don't always have to start these discussions with people, but I do think also that playing devil's advocate can be a useful way of arriving at the truth and just a useful way of instigating debate. No idea what you're saying, Manuel. Don't get it. Zoya. Oh, Zoya. I don't think I'm going to touch that one. I'll just leave you with that thought. Yeah. This is a tender and delicate issue right now. You see, I don't need laws. I don't need laws. We the people. We, the people of England, do not need laws to tell us what we can and can't talk about. We develop our own sensibility about this, and that happens quite naturally. And my response to Zoya's comment came as a result of talking about this issue in the past and deeply upsetting some of my viewers. And I don't want to deeply upset some of my viewers. And by the way, I have viewers from Russia and I have viewers from Ukraine. So there's basically nothing I can say about this situation that's not going to upset someone. In fact, even choosing not to talk about it is probably going to upset someone. But just take it from me, I know basically nothing about this other than what the media tells me. And so I do not feel qualified to make any comment right now. I totally agree with you, Sonia. Playing devil's advocate helps to consider wider perspectives. Yes. And also, as a teacher, I think that playing devil's advocate helps my students develop skills of argumentation, discussion, inquiry, and it helps to put their beliefs to the test. And I want to put their beliefs to the test. And I am perfectly prepared for them to put my beliefs to the test as well. Because that is a sound academic way of arriving at the truth. Put your ideas to the test and test them properly. And that's what I think devil's advocate can do. Anyone who doesn't know, by the way, playing devil's advocate means making a strong argument for the opposing side. That's what we're saying when we say play devil's advocate. So it's a lovely idiom. Play devil's advocate. Make a strong argument for the other side. This is an idiomatic word phrase. Idiomatic multi-word verb or verb phrase. Manuel says dialogue means you give your opinion, I give mine. The quandary would be you want to be up on me, not a good manners. There be born the argument. The quandary would be you want to be up on me. What do you mean by up on me, not a good manners, Manuel? Maya says, I think politicians have no right to take offence as criticism is part of their work. Like blood is part of a doctor's work, unless it concerns appearance. If you're touchy, don't go into politics. I mean, why do we say unless it concerns appearance? People make jokes about politicians' appearance all the time. In fact, people make jokes about my appearance. I'm just a YouTuber with 10,000 subscribers. And I get comments in the videos. Hey, you bald guy, you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, you know, come on. If we can't take comments about our appearance, then we've got big problems, right? Isn't that something that you just learn at school? The school bully comes and picks on you about your appearance. And eventually you just think, yeah, whatever. Is that all you've got? This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about robustness. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about not being fragile. Okay? I think making a negative comment about someone's appearance is distasteful and potentially reveals an area of personal failure in the person who is making the comment. I think it's a very low blow. And by the way, I've done it myself. So I own up. I confess. All right? I have done it. And I'm sorry. Who hasn't at some point? Who hasn't made a comment like that? But it's such a low, essentially pathetic thing to do, isn't it? To say something about someone's negative, about someone's appearance, to be nasty. But on the other hand, you've got to be able to take that. You know, you've got to be able to take it. You've got to be able to take it. Shouldn't be illegal. Even if it's pathetic. You know, that's the point, isn't it? But, you know, remember, Maya, I'm not just arguing for criticizing politicians, okay? I'm arguing for the right to offend and be offended without interference from the law. That's what I'm arguing for. The right to offend and be offended without interference from the law. That's what I'm arguing for. And it is a hill, by the way. It is a hill that I would die on. Do you know this expression? Die on this hill, die on that hill. Basically means put yourself or something very valuable to you at risk for a specific issue. This is called a hill to die on. Dying on a hill basically means keeping yourself vulnerable on an issue, taking a stand on an issue at risk to yourself or to something valuable to you, like your job or your reputation, because it's something that you believe in. I imagine that this expression comes from war, where soldiers would try to defend a hill because they thought the hill was important, right? So people say stuff like, you know, I'm not going to die on this hill, or don't die on that hill, or I would die on that hill, right? To say that this is an issue where it's a red line for them. It's a red line. Man, well, it doesn't literally mean die. Okay. I mean, it could, actually. If we were in a very nasty world, it could. But it doesn't, it's not literal about die, okay? It's just, risking something. Yep, Julia exercised her right to respond to that comment. But I still don't have anything to say. Further stuff from Manuel, great. All right. Okay. Anyone got any other things on their mind? How's it going with learning English, folks? Can I help you with anything? You got about another 5 minutes of my time, and then I'm off. By the way, I don't know if this is going to be a regular thing. I'm just real busy, folks. There's just so. But I know I always say I'm busy. I always say I'm busy, and I always feel like I'm busy, even when I'm not. But I am. I really am. But I would love to do more streams. It's just fitting it in and having the energy to do it. That's all. So what do we got? What do we got? Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me, Julia. Thank you for reminding me to do my thing. I can't even remember how you do it now. Was it this one? Make sure, everybody, that you do. What is that? That's not what it's supposed to do. Do it again. There we go. Make sure that you do, of course, hit that like button and hit subscribe. Should we do that again? Yeah. Took me like 30 minutes to make that thing. I don't use it enough. I should use it more. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. Yeah, that's right. You get more stuff. More stuff like this. More rants. More rants from Rich. What future topics would you like to see, folks? I'm battling with a master's at the moment. I've got all kinds of personal stuff going on. I got work, lots of work. By the way, apologies to... I have 2 private students who still have classes in the bank with me. I just want to apologize to you. I'm really sorry that I just cannot teach you right now. And by the way, I'm no longer doing private classes. These are the last ones. I'm just wrapping them up. But we suspended them over the summer. And there's just a handful left, and I just do not have the time and energy to do it. So I'm sorry. I hope I will get round to it. Maybe the Christmas holiday. gonna pay my debt during the Christmas holiday to those who still have classes paid for with me. Okay, Jagji, what are you talking about? You spammed that a few times. I know him well, too well. Difference. Oh, I see what you're saying. You only need to say it once, please. And I didn't realise you were asking a question, so just try to make it a bit clearer. I know him well. I know him too well. I mean, there's an obvious difference there, right? We just take a look at this, right? When we say to, this means something in excess, okay? And it's negative connotation. Right? Now, that doesn't mean that the sentence is negative, because it might be a joke. Right? Like, he's my best friend, and to be honest, I know him too well. You know? It could be a joke. Might be serious, though. I don't really want to get to know you too well. I don't need to know you any more than I know you right now. I don't want to get to know you too well. So, it's simply that, Jagji, that when we use to, it means something in excess in a negative way. And that's it. Don't really know what else you want me to say about that. I know him well means that you know someone well. You know? What's this, Pachu? You're living in a student dorm and recently noticed that some of your food items have gone missing from the shared refrigerator. You suspect that one of your roommates may have taken them without permission. You decide to talk to your roommate about the issue. What would you say to your roommate in this situation? Nice. Where did you get that from? Your roommate. So when you say roommate, you mean someone who sleeps in the same room as you? Or do you mean housemate? Not that it makes a great deal of difference. It's basically the same. Let's see, how would I do that? Hey, buddy, you all right? I had some chicken wings in the fridge. I'm just wondering, do you know anything about that? Because they've disappeared. Can you see how terrible I am at conflict? You all right, buddy? How's your day going? Yeah, not too bad here too. Not too bad. So, I just want to ask you something. Because I'm trying to work out what's happened. I had some chicken wings in the fridge and they've disappeared. You haven't seen them, have you? Yeah, something like that, Pachu. I mean, you have to assume the other person's going to be honest, because if they're going to lie, then obviously there's nothing you can say, is there? Because without like video evidence or whatever, then what can you do, right? So you can just ask them and expect honesty. And if they honestly tell you, I have not seen your chicken wings, I don't know, then you say, oh, okay, that's weird. Well, let's look out for that. And then if it keeps happening and there's no other option other than the fact that he's taking or she's taking them, then, well, at that point, you're dealing with a dishonest housemate. So what are you going to do about that? I mean, that's when you start, like, putting your food in, like, a locked container in the fridge, right? I mean, they maybe they were just hungry and drunk or something, and maybe they'll get embarrassed and, confess, and maybe they'll buy you some replacement food, That could happen. But yeah, the way I would phrase it is I would say, like, I had this food, it's disappeared, have you seen it? It's that simple, right? I had this, it's disappeared, have you seen it? And then they have a chance to be honest and say, yes, I was drunk and hungry and I ate it. I'm so sorry. I'll buy you some new chicken wings and I won't do it again. Or they might say no, and maybe that's true, and the fridge fairy stole it. The kitchen goblins broke into your fridge and took it. Jajit, stop spamming. You only need to say your message once. Last warning, don't spam again. You see a waiter taking a bite from each dish from the tray before serving it to the customer. How would you complain about him or report it? Call your waiter, or call your waiter and ask to speak to the manager. So either of those. Excuse me, I just saw one of your waiters taking a bite from food before he served it. That's all you need to say. Right, from that point, the conversation will take a natural course. So, excuse me, I've just seen one of your waiters take a bite Or I've just seen one of your waiters eating food from plates of customers before he served them. And at that point, they should ask you, who was it? When did it happen? Or whatever. Or maybe they'll say, "Sir, don't you realize that's what we do at this restaurant? It's how we give the food its exceptional flavor." Of course, they are unlikely to say that. Most likely, they will ask you for details and you will give them. It's that simple, Judgy. The key, this is what I've found, the key to dealing with these sort of uncomfortable complaints is try to keep the emotion out of it and just state the facts. I have seen your waiter eating from food before serving it to customers. It's just truth. You're just stating a fact. Okay? And then it's up to them to be professional. Don't spam again, because I will ban you. Right, we got anything else? Five seconds, and then I'm gone. This is the weirdest way of counting in the world. Let me do that again. All right. Thank you very much for joining me today, everybody. My name has been Professor Rich, and today we've talked about free speech, and I've given you my perspective and my opinion on it. Make sure you do smash that like button and hit subscribe for future streams. And I hope to see you next time. Have a lovely, lovely, blessed week. Have a lovely, lovely, blessed week. By the will of God. And may you be saved thanks to the work of our Saviour, Lord Jesus Christ. Thank you very much, everybody. That's my opinion. If you want to talk about my faith sometime, always open to questions. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely week. Amen.